Hi, David Moore with Equity Advantage, and I've got Tina Colson in our office with me today. We are practicing. This is the quarantine content. I just want to assure everybody that we are 6 feet apart. So this is okay. But we're here to help you. I'm sure you've been busy Netflix binging, and hopefully if you stumble upon one of our channels, you'll be able to get something worthwhile that'll help you going forward. So Tina, you got a question for me from what I understand.
I do. So I own a lot of investment properties, and I keep thinking into the future and downsizing someday. And so I'm just wondering, David, is there a way that I can take that investment property that I identify and make it my personal residence one day? How would I go about doing that?
Sure. Well, I think you got to look at a couple of different things. People look at a primary residence. We were talking about Section 121 a bit ago, universal exclusion and what qualifies. And you start looking at how you define a primary residence. Well, how do you define property held for investment? And as far as hold periods and everything else, people always want to put a black and white timeline on there. And a lot of times people say, well, your question is about, in effect, converting an asset. But really the question is, what do we have to do to satisfy 1031's intent? And how do you do that? I mean, so if we look at 1031, I think one of the big misunderstandings or misconceptions out there is a lot of times people say 1031 contains a 2-year required hold, which is absolutely untrue. If you and I were brother and sister, yes, there's a 2-year required hold in a related party exchange. But even in that situation, it's not an absolute. If we can show that there was no intent to avoid tax, forgetting for the moment maybe that 1031 could be considered an effort to defer, and we're going to say not avoid, but to defer tax, defer gain. Even a related party transaction, it says 2 years, or if you can prove that there's no intent to avoid tax, that doesn't even apply in that situation. So if we look at just an arm's length transaction, how long does something have to be held? I typically tell people a year based upon a couple different factors. One, it's been proposed a couple times. Two, where's the break between short and long-term tax rates on assets held for investment? With that said, there's actually court cases where properties or exchanges were successfully defended after even as short a period of time as 4 months. And that court case sort of dovetails into your initial question, which for those of you that might have forgotten by now with all my babbling, really was, could I exchange into a property I convert into a primary residence or a second home? And the answer is certainly yes. How long should you wait? And that's really up to you and your tax counsel. They might say 2 based upon what we just described. I would say different tax years would be great, at least a year. And once again, I'm going to say the year based upon those factors I previously mentioned. But yes, it's certainly possible to exchange out of a property that's been held exclusively as investment and acquire a property with the intent to hold for investment and ultimately convert it to a primary residence. And I have no qualm saying that because the IRS has actually given us rules on that. I mean, they put things in place. So if we go back in the 90s, we'd have somebody exchange out of a property. Maybe they have a subdivision and they build a house and they live in that thing. You think about something they could exchange into that thing, break it all up, build a house, live in it for 2 years, sell it, move to the next one, live in it 2 years, sell it, take the exclusion, and boom, 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 boom. And builder developers do that all the time, right? So if we look at 1031, we've got a situation where the government saw this happen. They saw people buying a property via 1031, holding it for, let's say, a year, moving into it, living it for 2, and dumping it, taking the exclusion, getting rid of all the gain. Do you think the government liked that?
No, absolutely
not. Absolutely not, she says. Correct. So they put a 5-year minimum hold in place, and that slowed things down, basically. But you got to understand, anytime they put a rule in place, what the downside is, we now have a timeline that we have to play with. Sure. But what's the positive of it? They've acknowledged you can do it. So we don't have to worry about whether you can or can't do it. They've said, hey, this is how. Now, the 5-year hold, so what that meant is if you exchanged into a property, held it for, let's say, a year or so, whatever you and your tax people decide on, you move into it, you live in it for 2. Let's say we're 3 years into it now. And if you were to sell it after 3 years, even though you qualified for the universal exclusion, that's Section 121 at that time, the government's going to say, no, it's a fully taxable sale. So if you buy something via 1031, convert it, sell it inside 5 years of total hold, it's going to be a fully taxable sale. If you hold it for longer than that, okay, like I said, the government didn't see that stopping it enough. So we had the Housing Assistance Tax Act that came in 2007, 2008, and it became effective April of 2009. And that thing says you have to hold a property for no less than 5 years. And then after that, you can apply both Section 1031 and 121, but or 1031 was applied getting into it, 121 on a sale, but it's only going to give you a proration of the 250 or 500, and the proration's based upon the qualified versus non-qualified use periods from that effective date. So you've got to look at things, and you will never fully have the entire 250 or 500 using an exchange into a property. I tell people, forget it if you just want to get rid of the gain. Don't look at it. It's not going to be effective for you. If it's a place for you to get into for your retirement or ultimately to move in and retire into and live in, it's a very effective tool like it's always been. But don't look at it as a way to just do this transaction and then sell it after a few years, it doesn't work any longer. So tremendous opportunity with restrictions, but with the rules comes clarity on the process. So yes, you can do it. Just slow it down and look at it as a place to be, not a place to just go and hide the taxes after a couple of years.
Great. Thank you so much for answering
Sure.
that question. I know that we've got a lot of clients who ask that question as well. However we can serve them best, that's what we're after.
Great. David Moore with Tina Colson, Equity Advantage, 1031exchange.com. Thank you.
Thank you.